Hi, hello, how are you? And good morning, metalheads of the internet. You're looking wonderful today. Quite dashing and handsome indeed. Today we are talking about the latest studio album from Kanonenfieber entitled Die Urkatastrophe. This is the sophomore studio album from this German black and death metal crew whose name roughly translates, from what I understand, to Kanonenfieber. That's neat. That's kind of cool. I've actually read a lot of comments and gotten a lot of private messages from people, emails and DMs and shit like that, asking me about this album, requesting that I review this album. This is clearly the talk of the town within the metal Meltdown community and within the death, black, extreme metal undergrounds right now. So why not? Let's talk about it. I was going to talk about Bewitcher instead, but this has clearly got y'all's attention, and I can totally see why. Part of what makes Kanonenfieber so interesting is their ability to express the horrors, the violence, the atrocity, the consequences of war sonically through their sound. Now, granted, they're not the first metal band to talk about war in any capacity, and they most certainly won't be the last. But the way that they do it, I think, is a little bit more interesting and unique than that of, say, I don't know, Sabaton, for instance. Like, this isn't about glorifying war and how awesome war is and documenting these battles. I mean, it is about documenting these battles, but it's also not. It really is truly about expressing and detailing and kind of immersing you in a certain kind of atmosphere and kind of putting you in this world and making you really feel what it might have been like to fucking be in World War I specifically. And they're doing this with a variety of musical and conceptual tools. Musically, there are multiple blistering barrages of black and death metal bluster. There's a lot of bile and venom, and it's a raw and it's a crude record with screaming, screeching vocals, spoken word vocals as well, delivered almost like military commands, a variety of samples of tanks, machine guns, cannon fire, whistles, the engines and the spinning blades of planes and such. There's some really great use of melodic songcraft as well throughout the album. You know, a little bit of a melodic death metal, melodic black metal kind of underbite and underbelly. This does a great job at making everything feel really big and really important and striking and powerful and urgent. And conceptually, as Kanonenfieber describe on their own Bandcamp page, Die Urkatastrophe is based on factual reports, letters, and original documents from surviving and deceased soldiers from the First World War. Its intent is not to glorify because there is no glory in war. Everyone loses. Their lives, their souls, their humanity. This album is intended to commemorate the countless victims of World War I. War is often depicted in an abstract way through numbers and statistics. Kanonenfieber aimed to tell the stories of the nameless and the faceless in order to allow for a small glimpse of their personal horrors, and thereby the larger scale horror for mankind as a whole. And doing this definitely makes Die Urkatastrophe feel all the more dark and gripping and human as well. We're not pulling stories and influences from the history books or from World War I epics, blockbusters, and such. We're, going straight to the soldiers. We're going straight to the source. We're taking their notes, their documents, journal entries, their stories directly from their mouths. And it ultimately makes for a more moving and fulfilling and cathartic experience. You've got the double whammy of Gross Mach Fantasy and Menschenmühl opening the record on a very powerful note. You've got some pulsing, semi-distorted synth lines with a variety of different vocals, spoken word kinds of samples like military commands and like the cries of soldiers on the battlefield as well, interspersed throughout this little intro piece with some dissonant, like melodic wailings and licks, then kind of blossoming in a way on Menschenmühl into an epic, melodic, blackened death metal rager. This thing is filled with battering, pummeling beatdowns, very muscular, chunky, heavy, dark, death metal guitar work delivered with the precision and the speed I would expect of like a classic black metal number. And a lot of like dark, epic, semi-doomy melodic riffs as well layered over top of everything, making it feel all the more grandiose and evil and punishing. Tons of super menacing, venomous vocal displays as well. I mean, at certain points it really just sounds like somebody straight up spitting acid and bile. Then there's the following cut, Stormtroop, which does a great job building on that dread and momentum momentum, pulling new influence from stark, stubborn, classic melodic death metal. I'm reminded specifically of like some darker shades and moments from the At the Gates discography, like To Drink from the Night itself. We also have some more spacious atmospheric sections here as well, which introduce some softer, more melancholic tones with some more dreary chords, and I think that does a great job at kind of like adding to the heart and the emotion and the tragedy of this record and, you know, this song's specific themes and ideas. Then there's the absolutely monolithic blackened death metal of Der Malwurf, which is filled with emotive gang vocals and choral vocals and some really tight, punishing grooves and beat downs and like pummeling sections. It almost feels like a more primitive and simplistic take on something I'd get from Gojira. Like, it has that same kind of feel. Then there's Waffenbruder, which probably leans the furthest into melodic death and black metal territory, with lots of soaring, triumphant, powerful hooks and licks and harmonies and more melancholic tones and clean sections, but still, you know, blast beats and like venomous, vile, black metal guttural vocals as well. Like, it kind of feels like a nice cross-section between like classic In Flames and Dark Tranquillity and even like Dissection. Panzerhenker stands out as a favorite of mine. It gets me the most hyped and pumped up, pulling influence from across the death metal spectrum. It has some absolutely seismic grooves all throughout, some slow, chunky transitions and drawls, and some really deep, menacing, powerful, like brutal death metal style guttural vocals. And then still all throughout you have these really effective little spurts and explosions of like nasty melodic blackened death metal. You know, all of these sounds and influences do a great job at playing off of each other, contrasting with each other, creating different kinds of like tones and movements. The most surprising cut on the record, though, I would say, is Aus Blutenschlot. This brings in more orchestral elements. It goes into more epic and bombastic and dynamic territory. It's more theatrical and dramatic in its scope and presentation, bringing in horns and keyboards and orchestral elements and such. That's right, we're doing symphonic blackened melodic death metal, I guess. But I mean, it's really well done. You have these dreadful, slow-moving sections, very brutal in tone and in sound. You have these more explosive death metal, black metal bursts as well. Once more orchestral elements are brought into the forefront of the sound, it really makes this feel very big and epic and important. To me, it feels like I'm in the midst of the chaotic stimuli of the battlefield itself. Like, there's a lot going on, there's a lot to process, it's horrifying, it's like the peak of the most violent and the darkest period of the war. And I gotta say, too, closing the album out with Als die Waffen kommen, a very droll, bitter, kind of rustic, acoustic-driven number is pretty bold, but effective. And it kind of reinforces what I already felt in Aus Blutenschlot as well, where this is the peak of the war, and now the war is over, but it's not a triumphant victory. Everyone is sad and happy that it's over, I guess. I mean, it's not like a truly depressing end, but it's not like, yeah, victorious, we win, you know? Fuck yeah, we did it. From what I can gather, an anonymous musician by the name of Noise is responsible for literally everything on this record. He's credited as being responsible for literally everything on the album, on the Encyclopedia Metalum as well. And it honestly makes sense that it would be like one guy doing everything, because this really does sound like a passion project. I'm feeling a very strong 4.5 out of 5 on this. I would like maybe a little bit more variety in certain cuts here and there, but overall, this is a fucking great record. One of the more unique kind of black death metal records I feel I've heard so far this year. This was not a band I was previously paying attention to. This is now a band that from here on I will be paying very close attention to. In fact, I'd love to get Noise on the Metal Meltdown here and really pick his or her or their brain and just kind of figure out more about like how this album works and like more about the stories that specifically Noise pulled influence from. But we will cross that particular bridge, not when, but if we get there. For now, very strong 4 to 5. I really cannot wait to see what this band does next. I will be looking for this on vinyl. Just a fucking really excellent, powerful record. Definitely check it out. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I am not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. Join us on Discord. Pick up some merch on Redbubble. Boom, video. Boom, video. Wow. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.